everybody, Robert here. So I just reached 1,000 subs and I really appreciate that. That means you guys appreciate what I'm doing, and that means the world to me because that's why I'm doing it. I want to do it because I love talking shop. I love talking cinema. I love talking to new filmmakers. And yeah, so thank you again for everybody watching. I really appreciate it. Again, like, subscribe if you haven't already, please. And I'll keep putting out content like this. So again, thanks so much. So this week, continuing with our theme of basically, your kind of how-to filmmaking, your first feature film, and and so on, getting started in the industry. I have a special guest, my buddy Justin Anderson. We're going to jump on a Zoom call with him because Justin and I go all the way back to film school together. We made our first feature together called Redemption, A Mile into Hell. It was a Western. We did it for nothing, nothing, next to nothing. And I think it's a great, well, maybe talk more about that film, that specific film at another time. But I wanted to bring Justin in because essentially, once you have your script, once you're ready to roll, the most important thing is that you do a breakdown of everything in your script, every prop, every location, every actor, every extra, everything that appears in your movie. And when you're doing an ultra low budget movie or a nano budget movie, you're going to have to try to see how much of that you can get for free. That's going to be essential to you actually pulling it off. And we're going to discuss that more with Justin here in a minute. But it's also good for you guys to talk to him because he's, he is a professional. He does this for a living. He works on films that are definitely a couple budget tiers up from me. Not huge films yet, but definitely much bigger than my little movies. So, and yeah, he's a professional unit production manager, Directors Guild of America member, and line producer. So we're going to talk about script breakdowns. We're going to talk about all that great stuff. We're going to get into budgeting. And basically, yeah, hope you guys find it helpful. Hope you find it useful. So let's just get into it. All right, I'm going to jump on the call. All right, so today I'm here with Justin Anderson, longtime friend and collaborator, partner on many films. Justin and I actually went to film school together. We made our first movie called Redemption. If you want to check it out, it's Redemption, A Mile into Hell, or A Mile from Hell. I forget. Either way, I think it's a mile. I think it actually came out as both. This is why I'm confused. Yeah. If you Google that, because if you Google Redemption, you're going to get the phone book. But anyway, it was a little Western we made back in the day for pretty low budget, kind of the things we're talking about here. And what I kind of do, the videos that I've been doing on this channel, how to make your first feature, which is quite an adventure, as I'm sure Justin can attest to. So yeah, let's talk a little bit. Let's just start there. I mean, we want to focus on budgeting and script breakdown, but maybe we could start back because you work on much bigger films now. But if we started back thinking about our first experience, and what advice would you give to young filmmakers or, any age, but let's say new filmmakers?
My best advice that I could give is make sure you love it and be prepared to dedicate everything, because this is not an easy industry to break into by any means. And if you don't love what you do, you're going to end up hating it and be miserable at some point, because it's long hours, hard work, low pay. Welcome to SWAT. That's exactly what this is.
If any pay in the beginning, because more likely
you're in the beginning, you're paying.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're maxing out your credit cards to do it. So just, again, full disclaimer.
And as I've said, I made a check. Oh, it's
right. No, the first check you get is quite an experience. It's probably for 50 cents, but that's not the point. You got paid, and that's quite an accomplishment. You just joined the DGA, correct?
I did.
Let's talk about that a little bit. And
I spent many years, because I had been working towards wanting to be a member for a long time, but I wanted, because I'm not a director by any means. I'm a producer, line producer, UPM. That's all I've ever done. And so what ended up happening is I did several DGA films where I was the UPM, but not the UPM, because they couldn't have a UPM. So instead I was like the production supervisor. But what that did is that helped me get my foot in the door, so that when I did have an opportunity on a show that flipped and I joined, they looked at my experience as oh, well, you already have all this experience. And all I needed was 3 other members to vouch for me. And I just went to my 3 other UPM producer friends, and it wasn't even a question. The moment I said, hey, I have an opportunity, they were like, oh, I'll sign for you. I was like, oh.
Yeah, it's funny because it's funny you say that, because I'm planning on asking you to vouch for me. So perfect timing.
Yeah, exactly.
But just to explain, though, we should have, DGA is Directors Guild of America.
Yes.
UPM means Unit Production Manager, which is exactly what it sounds like. Yeah. Just to bring people up on the terminology, you are the manager, basically the production.
Yes.
So if the production is a fast food restaurant, you're the guy who's you keep make sure everybody's the fryer's getting filled or the cash register's full of coins and all,
I
right?
tell everybody like I deliver the pizzas.
You deliver the pizzas. There
I'm
you
the
go.
one that's like, all right, I make sure the crew's put together. I make sure the locations are all set. I make sure the contracts are signed. I make sure and then as line producer, I make sure payroll is cleared. I, there's
Yeah.
a slew of things,
Right.
as you
And
know, because you do
well,
all
I
that
do.
yourself as well.
Most of what I've done, particularly lately, has been non-union and really low budget. So let's talk a little bit about the differences. Obviously, the pros and cons between a union movie and a non-union movie, particularly if you're on a very small, modest budget. What is your opinion on that?
Well, the pros for I would say like non-union is you get more creative control and flexibility, and there's a little more freedom in a sense of like, okay, well, like I want to cast who I want, like now you should still think about like return on investment. So you should still think about, well, maybe I shouldn't cast exactly who I want. Maybe I should look at numbers and try to cast. But the thing is, the higher up the budget tier you go, the more inclined, like if you're spending like a $30,000 feature, even a $10,000 feature, you can take more of a gamble and it just has to be a good movie. You don't want union actors. You don't need all that. You can just be like, well, I'm just making the movie I want with the actors I want to do. But the thing is, once you start getting into like 500,000, a million, 5 million, then you have to start thinking, well, I need to make this money back because most people don't want to just gamble there. So what ends up happening is you have people that you have to answer to. Like, for instance, you have to answer to distribution about cast. You have to answer to your EPs about like if your EP comes back and says, hey, I like your whole script except this one scene. You can't just be like, well, that's my scene. That's my vision. I don't care. You have to be like, well, let me think about what you're saying and see if there's a compromise. Let's work. So you're essentially inviting more people's opinions into the process, which look is still fine. I've still worked on that level and you can still make great films. Like, I'm not saying that it's bad, but I am saying that it is a bit of a con because sometimes, like I just went through this with a film that's coming out later this year. I can't name the name, but like where the director and we really felt like there was certain bits of humorous moments that the director's style. He kind of had this style of like some of the moments were like kind of humorous. And the sales and the, other people involved were like, we don't like the humor. We want to play it straight. So strip that out of those two scenes. And look, the two scenes still worked. Like audience testers, like they still thought it was great. They didn't care one way or the other. But it was just one of those where it's like for us, it was like, ah man, that sucked because I liked it better the way it was before. But if they think it's going to sell better, or if this is what they want because they're putting in a lion's share of the funds, we'll give them what they want. They're not ruining the movie. It's just you have to realize that it's not just your movie when you're at that level.
Sure. And, often the thing to remember is it's hard creatively when you have a very strong vision. I'm lucky because a lot of the films that I've done are, I call them the let's pay the rent movies. They're very popular this time of year, which is always a little bit of a hit because like some of my worst movies, because they were Christmas themed, they get a lot of views and it's like, I've made better movies, people. Anyway, moving on. But the issue is like to work with a distributor from a business perspective, they're just trying to make money. Okay, that's just the reality of it. A lot of their suggestions, even if they don't seem right to you creatively, they're usually, if they're a good distributor, they're basing that on experience.
Exactly.
So that's just something to consider before you fight every battle, because unfortunately, it's a reality, as you say. You really want your people to make their money back because if they don't, it's hard to go to them again and say, well, you lost a lot with me. How do you feel about making another movie?
Yes.
So
all of a sudden they're going to be like, why am I going to gamble with you again? I just lost.
Yeah. And I think another way to look at it is pick your battles, because if you make a film or two films or whatever you make, as you see a lot of actors do, you're paying your dues. You're cooperating. Yeah. Okay. We're making this action movie or we're making this horror movie or whatever it is. We're paying our dues. Then you get that special project. Yep. You really just go out of your way to try to tailor it. And you're still going to have to make compromises if you're spending other people's money. But, I did that with my distributor, where I did like a film for him in exchange for him financing a film I really wanted to do. So there's always a way to, you know,
Yeah.
pick
I
your
mean, look,
battles. And
and
yeah,
that's the thing. The more you do and the more business, the more your relationship strengthens with these people and the more projects you do, the more pull you will have for like when you do have that one creative battle you want to fight. Sometimes it goes both ways where like, yeah, sometimes you're listening to them and like, all right, well, I'm leaning on your sales experience. But if you've done like 10 films for them and you've always made money, you might have that one where they're like, well, we don't like that, but if that's what you want, we'll give you this one, because it's not going to hurt sales that much, like, so it's a give and take. It's a push and pull, making movies. It's very collaborative at the end of the day. Like, even though it's business, it's still collaborative.
sure. And it's still art. It's still art in any form. Because even the worst movies that I've made that I certainly not super proud of, it was still fun to go on set and to light the set and to work with talent. And it's like, that's still cool. But yeah, when anything becomes a job, it's no longer a hobby, and you have to generate money. You have to compromise with people who are investing in the film, people who are distributing the film, and being like, again, if you're working with good people, I think key is that you have a good relationship with a distributor who really does understand the market. Their advice is that they're not doing it to try to hurt the project,
No,
obviously.
they
And often
care
they're right.
about profit.
Yeah. It's hard, but like often they're right. Like I get into this with artwork. Like I often, would disagree about the approach on the artwork, but they're basing that approach on years of experience. And it's like, yeah, the audience responds a lot more positively to what they did than they may probably would have what I would have had in mind. So there's a trust there, I think. And it's good if you have a distributor that you can work with and that you can kind of, as you say, it is a give and take. And they want to compromise with you. And I think one thing, because I've been an executive producer, and I think you have too.
Oh yeah.
And I've hired directors. No one wants to take your movie. No one wants to do your job because your job sucks. It's really hard. I mean, it's a great job. It's a lot of fun, but nobody's trying to take your movie.
No.
They're just trying to make it as marketable as possible. And even forget the commercial aspect of it. The other really nice thing about that is marketable as possible means wide an audience as possible, which is every filmmaker's goal. You want as many people to see your work as possible. So, but yeah, being unhappy with your work, as you say, any type of collaborative venture or having to compromise in decisions you don't like, that's just life,
Exactly.
And that's true with anything.
Business too.
Right. It's just business and it's just life. I mean, what situation do you just get your way all the time?
Yeah, never.
Right.
At least not in the life I've lived. I don't.
No, I mean, it's the way it goes. So yeah, I'm trying to basically build this up kind of episodically. Like I did a little episode a couple weeks ago about your script. And, again, approaching this more from you're making your first movie, a commercial venture, an artistic, but with an emphasis on an artistic commercial, meaning it's not going to go the film festival route, which again, there's nothing wrong with. I think, in fact, that's a good route to go. But just for the sake of it's kind of more reflective of the road that I picked was to get something that could be professionally distributed so that it could make money, so that I could make more movies. And by doing that, essentially, like, you get your script. And of course, the most important thing is what do you do next after you have your script locked? Or, locked is always a loose term, meaning your script is completed. Your script isn't completed because you're going to get notes from everybody and their mother. But you have at least a script that you're happy with presenting.
It'll be locked in the terms of you can move forward.
Right. You have a working
understanding. It's always going to adjust because you're going to have talent that might want some changes. You're going to get on set and be like, that doesn't work now.
Or things won't be available to you. You have to change your location because, we can use this, but and I talked about being open to that, being flexible to that. Don't think it has to be 100% because, it is a bit of square peg and round hole. So you just have to go with what, particularly when you're working even on a modest budget, but on a no budget, you really have to. If you stay true to the core vision, be flexible outside of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what would you say? I mean, let's talk about, a lot of what you do is tagging and breakdown and budgeting. So
yes.
Let's talk about that process. You get a script from a producer or director.
So basically, the way I approach it is the moment I get a script from someone, the first thing I do, like hopefully it's in final draft format, which most of the time it is, but there have been those occasions.
Microsoft Word guys, huh?
Something. Yeah. And I just immediately kick it back. And I'm just like, guys, you put this in Final Draft. It's way too much work for me to adjust your script.
Let's talk about that for a minute, because I know a lot of people starting out, and if they are starting out, they're probably not going to be hiring a professional, line producer or UPM. But there is industry standard software, and it's used for a reason. Final Draft is the screenwriting software. I've used it since I was a film student. And I got the student discount, and I've upgraded it every other year, or whatever. But is there things that you can get for free that'll do just as good a job? Sure,
absolutely.
But when you can, and you don't need to do this tomorrow, making an investment in professional software is a good thing to do, because then you are kind of like speaking the same language as other creatives that you're working with in the industry.
It also helps you because things like Final Draft, they're made for script writing. So it auto formats a lot of things for you that when you're showing your script to other people, like, yeah, sure, like on the smaller level, you can get away with a little bit, but eventually the goal is you want to work into the more professional spheres. And if you send a script out of format, and that's your first impression, somebody's automatically going to go, okay, this isn't a professional.
They're not even going to read it. They won't
even look. They'll see it's out of format and just kick it back. Be like, you just wasted my time.
Right.
So it's like just best to avoid that and at least have it in format. But let's say it's in format. So then the next thing that I think is important to do with the script is you got to tag it. And I mean tag like everything. Like, when you go through tags mode, it's an option in Final Draft, and I'm sure there's other things to do it. You can break this down manually, but it's even more time consuming. But what you want to do is you want to tag everything, like tag your locations, tag your script days, tag your props, tag your characters, your background. If there's a stunt, anything that's in that script that you need to account for. And then what you do is from there, once I get everything tagged and broken down on the script, then I import it into Movie Magic, because in order to do a budget, I need to do a spec schedule. Now I know ADs will always come behind and clean up a schedule.
And AD means assistant, sorry, but AD is assistant director.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So they'll always clean up a schedule, but before they even get involved, I need to do a budget. So what I do is I'll take this tag script, put it into my scheduling software, which I use Movie Magic standard. There are others you can use as well, but that one is standard. And I just immediately just break it down and schedule. And what I do when I import it is all those tags import over. So it'll create all the little sheets for your movie that'll show you what location is, what the script day is, which, script day is something I think a lot of people overlook, but it will save you, especially on these low budgets, because script day tells you what day of the script you're on, which can affect your wardrobe. If you have any injuries, they're look continuity, stuff like that, which if you have a small team and you're moving fast on these ultra lows, it's helpful to know oh, you don't want any continuity issues. Oh man, he's wearing the wrong jacket. And let me interject there about it, the continuity, because it is a real struggle when you're doing a run and gun indie. And if you don't have a dedicated continuity person, that's really difficult. Outside of obviously your camera and your sound operator, you're really, if you can get someone to do your continuity, that will help you. Obviously, they have to be good. If you get somebody that doesn't do a good job at it, you're kind of screwed. Once you import everything, you get it all broken down. I always go through, double check, make sure all the sheets are accurate so I know what characters are in what scenes, what locations, what props, what stunts, what picture cars, all that. Then I'll do a spec schedule where I'll just go through and I'll schedule it based on what I think the schedule should be, because, as you get more experience, you start to learn all right, we want to shoot this stuff first. We want to save this stuff for last. We want to group it by location, obviously, because production moves will kill you, which is another thing for smaller films. The lower your budget is, the smaller you need to make your film when it comes to locations. Don't come in with oh, I'm doing a $50,000 movie and I have 20 locations. Good luck. Make it 3. Right. Hey, Saw was 1, right? Yeah, I mean,
Reservoir Dogs is basically one. I
I
mean,
agree. Like I always love the fewer the better. So once I get the schedule done, that will then give me the day out of days that I need for talent, vehicles, stunts, locations. Basically, I'll generate reports off that'll tell me how many days I need all of these things based on the schedule I did. And then I get into the real nitty-gritty of my job, which is putting together a budget. And the one thing I will always recommend to everybody is even if your budget's big or small, always put together a proper budget. Like your first pass budget, pretend like I just want to see what everything would cost standard. Like, like I'm going to make it what I want the budget to be. And you just go in there. And what that's going to do is that's going to help you basically look at everything, what everything costs. And it's going to give you that experience of, okay, so now I know. And like, when it comes to how to do a budget, I can't really explain to people how to do it because it's just something that you learn over years and you figure out like what things cost. Like I know all the book rates off the top of my head. I know what union contracts you fall under. I know what insurance costs. I know what a car explosion costs and all this. So like I know what to include, water trucks, cleanup, all this. You'll learn that as you go, but the key is to just put together the best you can what your movie's going to cost and what you want it to cost. And then from there, that's when you like, if we're in a situation where it's like, hey, I just broke down this script. I think at minimum you need like $3 million, but then they come back and say, well, we only have 1.5. Okay, here's how we do it at 1.5.
right.
We're cutting this, we're cutting it. But then the reason I do it this way is because all the people involved need to see what you're cutting and where and why. So it's like, all right, well, we're combining these casts. We're cutting down to one location. You're no longer shooting 20 days, you're shooting 15. You don't get like a car explosion, but maybe we do like a car flip because that's a little bit cheaper and safer. And then you basically work your budget down till you get it to where you're going to be. And obviously when you're doing it on like the shoestring or the smaller budgets, it might seem sometimes overwhelming, but there's always ways to get it done. You just have to know. But the important thing is to know what you're cutting, where, and why.
No, as far as doing a budget, and because if you're approaching it from a micro budget movie, let's, back to our first film, we made a Western because we were film students in Arizona.
Yes.
If we didn't live in Arizona, we didn't have all these cowboy reenactors and this scenery and like Western town stuff, we never would have done it.
No.
You have to do what is available to you geographically based on your location. Let's say your uncle has this really cool old warehouse. There you go. Yep. He's going to let you in for nothing. You just got to mow his lawn or something. That's how you have to think. I mean, because that is essentially, that's something that, it's a budget item. It's a location. I mean, if you can mark 0 next to that, holy cow,
Well, when you start scaling down your budget, like I was saying, like you brought up a good point. Like those are things where like, okay, I know it cost all this to do this, but my brother has this. Well, that just cuts that out. Oh, my aunt has this. Oh, that cuts that out. Oh, all my buddies in our case were Western reenactors. Okay, great. Like they just want to be in a movie.
Right.
Like they just came out for essentially like food.
Yeah, exactly. And they, that was it. We only had to buy wardrobe for the principals.
Mm-hmm.
And that made it doable, really, because it wasn't, their wardrobe was a little bit more than what it would be for, modern clothing, but not, it didn't kill us. So there is ways to try to do
really
that,
spent on that was for the location and for the principal actor's wardrobe. That was it.
Right. Yeah. And we got the location, obviously, at a crazy cheap rate, too. So, I mean, that's definitely something just to consider when you're in the script phase. You can't think about your first movie and say, okay, it's going to be Titanic versus the Sharks and whatever. That's a stupid, you know what I mean? Really dumb, big explosions and,
Actually, that's genius. I'm pretty sure.
I think that is right. Titanic meets Sharknado. I just knocked my camera. Yeah, Titanic meets Sharknado. The Titanic rises up. Yeah, dude. Don't hope Huey Bowles not listening. But yeah, no, I mean, it's like, I don't know. I mean, again, keep it reasonable, which is something a lot of filmmakers struggle with. They want to do historical stuff or they want to do this, they want to do that, which isn't impossible, but you have to have if you're a member of like like the Civil War reenactors in your area, well, there you go.
Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
now you got, if you live in the UK or something, you want to do a medieval place and you got access to some old looking buildings, hell yeah, go for it. Because that is also going to help your movie a lot as far as distribution and selling. The more you can show in production value, the more chances you have of being successful. But, you've got to look for those opportunities that just happen to be available to you.
The other thing that I will say that is super important, because it's something you can do on every single budget, even the shoestrings, have a little bit of a nest egg set aside for a contingency, even if it's just like $1,000. Just because I know, like, sometimes you're doing these little like $20,000 movies, it seems like you have nothing to spare. Try to find something that you can set aside, because the one thing that I can say that is true for every shoot is something unplanned will always happen or go wrong.
Every time.
And at last minute, that's when you can't get around cost. There's going to be a cost no matter what if it's a last minute solution. So it's good to have something that you can go, okay, well, it sucks, but at least I had a little bit set aside so that I didn't lose a whole day. I just lost an hour. I just lost a shot.
And that's where you really have to improvise quickly. Yes. It doesn't hurt to keep a couple $100 in cash. Get them in 20s or 50s, not $100 bills. The amount of times I've had to reach into my wallet to solve a problem because a neighbor comes out, we're filming outside a guy's house, and he's just like, you didn't gas me, what the hell? And he won't turn his damn lawnmower off. What are you going to do?
Yeah.
You got to get rid of the guy. With such a fluid budget on a very low level is everything has to cost nothing. If you start there, then of course that's not actually going to happen. But if you're like, okay, the locations have to be free. We've got to find somebody to sponsor the food for free. We have to get this, we have to get that for free. If you just keep that in your head.
Yeah.
And this is why this isn't really a business model. We're talking about your first movie. This is your chance to beg, borrow, and not steal, but beg and borrow, call in every favor that you have, because you can't make a business model out of this. You can't come back a year later and say, hey guys, guess what? I want everybody to work and help me again and blah, blah, blah. Obviously, on your level, you're not going to get anything for free per se, but you always have to just try to pay as little as possible. That's just business. You have to have that sense. Never get that idea that you have enough, because you don't. Because as Justin said, something's always going to happen. Because you're going to leave set with $0. So no matter what, no matter how far ahead of the game you think you are, it's just Murphy's always on the job. Something's going to happen that you're going to have to fix. And usually the only way to fix that is with money. So you got to you got to not be afraid to grovel. Don't be too proud to beg. Do what you got to do, and again, never think you're ahead of the 8 ball. That's like jinxing yourself. I've done that where, we're halfway through the show and wow, we're looking pretty good. And then of course the next day, Murphy's tornado comes through. It never fails. So that's really good. Well, I really appreciate your time tonight, buddy. It's great talking to you. Hopefully we can do this again soon. Of course. Here. And,
I'm always it's fun.
Really appreciate it. I know my audience will too. So anything you want to say signing off, brother?
No, not really. Just I do have a couple projects coming out later this year.
Anything you want to plug?
Sheriff is one of them. Married Alive. So hopefully they'll do really well. And
what's your 2 projects? You got 2 projects. You got 2 projects coming out, you said?
I do. The Sheriff and Married Alive. So I don't know their exact dates yet because they've just been delivered. But hopefully, fingers crossed, they'll end up being really good. Yeah,
and come back when they get released. We'll maybe do another follow up, or
absolutely.
Get a trailer link for you and all that. So excellent.
Perfect.
Very cool, buddy. Well, it's great to talk to you again, man. It's almost Christmas, so Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, all that good stuff. And excellent, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon.
All right, guys. So that was our call with line producer, unit production manager, Justin Anderson. Thank you, Justin, for jumping on the call with me and being a part of my channel. Hope you guys found it informative. Please check back next week. We will have more content for you. Peace.